Welcome back to the program, everyone. We've now reached video 4, where we're going to have another quick look at the inner join. We're going to build up on the knowledge that we've gained so far, and we're going to look at multi-joins. So let's head on in to SQL Server Management Studio. But first, as always, before we move on to the lesson, we need to cover off the example that I left you with from the end of the previous video. First things first, as always, let's just change database. Make sure we're working the right one. Control R, and we can have a look at the question. So it was all about the purchasing team and a massive order that they've bodged. So the purchasing director has asked for a set of data from you, which they need in order to help them trace back the error. So he was looking for the purchase order ID, order date, delivery date, and of course the description of each item ordered, and if that order line had actually been finalized or not. So which tables are we going to use? If it's purchasing director, probably using the purchasing schema. So if we have a quick look at that, there's only 5 tables. We've got purchase order lines, purchase orders. We're after a lot of order information, so we're definitely going to be using that. And they mentioned here the order line has actually been finalized or not. So we'll probably be using these 2 tables here. So first of all, looking at the purchase orders table, we'll highlight that, Control 3, bring up the top 100 rows, and we can see the various columns within. So he was after an purchase order ID, which we can get from that column there. Purchase order date, he has the order date, and the expected delivery date. He has the expected delivery date in there. Description of each item ordered, well, that's not in this table, and neither is if an order line has actually been finalized or not. So we can at least get 3 tables, 3 columns should I say, out of purchase orders, pseudonymized as O. So we've got our purchasing order ID, the order date, and of course the expected delivery date. Next, of course, we decided to have a look at the purchase order lines table, see if we can find the rest of the columns from there. Now we've got our purchase order ID, so we know that that's our linking value with the purchase orders table. We've got our description in there, which fulfills the 4th requirement there. And then scrolling along, is order line finalized? So we've got our little flag column there. So we're happy that the remaining 2 requirements are coming from our order lines table. And we're joining on purchase order ID, pseudonymized as L. So there's our first 3 columns up there, as expected, and then our second 2 columns from the order lines table. Let's run that off quickly, and we get 8,367 rows. So if you guys got that, then it's all good. Let's close that down and on with the lesson. Okay, so in the previous videos for this episode, we started looking at the inner join, brought in pseudonyms, and we're going to keep building on that. This one is all about multiple joins within the same query itself. As mentioned previously, we were just joining 2 tables together. Now that doesn't mean you're limited to just 2. You can keep on joining tables to your heart's content as long as there's a link between those tables, and this is done through the use of multiple joins. So for example, looking at these tables here, we've got orders and orders lines, which we've joined on many times before using the order ID. Now what we're going to do is bring in customer information as well, because our customers place orders, so we want to see which orders and order lines have been placed by which customer. So we simply just inner join on that. Bring in our customers, we're going to call it C, give it a nickname of C, and then we're going to join on the customer ID within the customers table. Have a look at that quickly. Remembering, of course, to change our database, unlike what I've just done there. There you go. There's our customer ID in there. So we've got that, and of course in our orders table, which we've looked at many times so far, we've also got a customer ID in there. So we know that our customers joins with our orders table using the customer ID. So now we can bring in our customer name, which is great. But we've also been asked to provide the customer categories as well. So we're going to do an inner join onto that table as well, and we're going to call it A as a nickname. Now, what have we got ID wise in the customer categories table? We've got a customer category ID, which is perfect for what we need. So have a look at the orders table. We've got a customer ID, but if we look around, there's no customer category ID in our orders table. So how can we bring that data in if there's no link to the order? Because there is a link to the customers table. So if I Control 3 on that, we have our customer ID, which we have in the orders table, and we have a customer category ID. So that is going to join with our customer categories table. As you can see here, our customers is C, so that's the pseudonym I'm using to bring that in, and we're going to link the two together. So key thing to note with this is that just because you've started with one table doesn't mean that all your subsequent joins need to go back to that table itself. You can join onto any of the other tables above it. So you need to have a little bit more experience, a little bit more knowledge on the database, checking out which tables link to other tables. So if you've been asked for quite a complex query using multiple joins to bring in specific data, you need to, of course, know which tables join to which other tables. So let's run that off quickly and see what we get. Here's your customer name, here's their category, their order ID, and the description of every item ordered. Now there's 4 different columns from 4 different tables here, so there's quite a lot going on with that. Key thing to note, however, is that when you're joining more than 2 tables together, the new table that you're bringing in to join must be able to link with a table above it. I say above it in terms of the way that this query is written. So for example, customers needs to be joined onto either lines or tables. So if I take the category, cut it and paste it above, and then try to run off that query, you'll see I get an error where it says that the C customer category could not be bound. And that is because it's looking for C, which we are calling customers. However, it's looking upwards. So saying we've got L for order line, we've got O for orders, but there's no C for customers because we haven't come to that yet. It's below, as you can see here. So we haven't come to C yet in any of the tables above. So how can I join it into something that we haven't pulled in yet? So the order in which you place your inner joins is also important. C, our customers table, is above the customer categories table, so it reads as customers first, nicknames it, and then it reads customer categories table next, names it, and now it can join to that table. So the key thing to take away is that while you can join multiple times on multiple different tables, the order is important as well. So the table that you're joining to needs to be above the current table that you're using. Another key takeaway from all of this is that every time you inner join, there has to be a link between the tables. So for example, if we had a customer who ordered millions of items, however, he doesn't have a customer category, so there's no link to a customer category there, then this query will not pull that customer's data. So your inner joins, multiple inner joins, will constantly filter out any data that's not linked throughout. So you may end up with fewer and fewer rows the more inner joins you put in, depending on your data, of course. But the logic is exactly the same when joining two tables together as it is joining four tables together. Pretty straightforward. So let's have a look at a quick example. Now, a huge batch of orders just been shipped in from our suppliers, but the purchasing team suspect there may be an issue, and the warehouse may have received several wrong shipments. So you've been asked to write a query to extract the following data. So quite a few columns there to look into, and we need to make sure it's for all the purchase orders placed in 2016 that also have order lines finalized. So for this example, don't worry too much about this filter at the end. I'll show you what's going on with that, but the main thing you need to worry about is pulling in these columns here. So if you want to give that a try, pause the video, give it a go, and then we'll go on and I'll show you building up that example once you're ready to go. Okay then, let's begin our statement. Begin with select star from, then let's check out our tables. So we need supplier name, supplier categories, so have a look at our suppliers. Okay, so we've got supplier categories, we've got suppliers, etc. So let's have a look. Let's bring suppliers in as our first table. And there we go. Quick look at the table. We've got a supplier ID, which is probably used for linking, and we've got supplier name. So we're happy that we can get that first one from suppliers. We've also been asked for supplier categories, and as we can see on the left, there is a specific supplier categories table. So we're going to be inner joining with supplier categories, and we're going to call this C. Carrying on with the join. Carrying on with the join. C dot got supplier category ID, so that's how we're going to join with the suppliers table. Equals s dot supplier category ID. Let's just confirm that. And yes, we've got a supplier category ID in our supplier table. So we're going to join on that. Comment that out quickly for you. So we have got supplier names, supplier categories. Now, has any of this data got any of the order information, the purchase orders that is? Nope, nothing in there with regards to the orders themselves. So let's have a look at a different table that we're going to bring in. And of course, we're looking at the purchase orders. Let's bring that in quickly. Control 3 to see the columns. And we've got a supplier ID. So we know the supplier ID exists in this table here. So we can join the two together. We're going to call it O for purchase orders on O dot supplier ID equals S dot supplier ID. Okay, so Control R, and we've joined another table to get our order date. Now next one, what items were ordered. So we're looking at the individual items, possibly the description. Do we have it in here? No, we don't. So we have to bring in another table. You can see going through the list, building up the tables as we go. It's quite a lot involved. However, the logic, as I mentioned before, remains the same. So we've looked at the orders. Now we're going to have a look at the order lines. Let's bring those in. Control 3. What items were ordered? We've got the description there, so we can fulfill that requirement. Ordered amounts. Ordered. Here we go. It says order outers, but we know that that's the ordered amount. Received amounts. We've got the received outers there. The on-hand quantity currently in the warehouse. Is that in here? So we're looking for stock. Got a stock item ID, but no actual stock amounts. So we're probably going to have to bring in yet another table. So we're going to call those L on L dot purchase order ID equals O dot purchase order ID. So as you can see, there's quite a lot going on. So if you struggled with this one, don't worry too much. Just have a look at this example and hopefully things will start becoming a bit more clear. So we needed to find the stock, the on-hand quantity currently in the warehouse. So we're looking at stock quantities. So we've got to look into our warehouse schema. That's obviously a giveaway. And we want our stock item holdings. So let's inner join onto that. S has already been used, so we're going to call it H for holdings. And we have a stock item ID. That's the only ID column in there. So we're going to bring that in. And of course we managed to see in our order lines there's a stock item ID in there. Happy days. So we can join the two together. It's L for line, stock item ID. Right, so now we can bring in quick look at the table. We can bring in our on-hand quantity. There we go, by linking the stock item ID. So we've had 5 tables to join together in this one to fulfill the requirement. As you can see, it started getting quite tricky towards the end, but the only way to do it is to build up your query bit by bit, looking at what columns need to be pulled, starting off, bringing in your first amount of data, and just simply building it up with your inner joins from there. Now, let's bring in our columns. So we knew the supplier name comes from supplier name. Supplier categories comes from our supplier categories, which is C. Supplier category name, remember ID was linking, so we want the actual name for this one. What next? The order date. So that obviously came from our purchase orders, which we've designated as O, just the order date. There we go. We brought that one in. What items were ordered? That came from our lines. The description. We had a look at that. Quite a few columns coming from our lines. Let's have a look at that. So we've got our description, and which is the only column that fills the ordered amount. Well, it would be the ordered outers. So that's going to be our ordered amount, and then we also wanted the received amount. Received outers, and one final column from our stock holdings. We needed to find the on-hand quantity, which is our quantity on hand. Wow, that was quite a bit of work. Joins all over the place, tables to tables to tables, getting a little bit manic. But we followed the logic and we slowly built up our query bit by bit. Let's run that off. And there you have it, 8,367 rows. So, a lot going on, guys. If you gave that one a go and we're happy with that, then it's all good. Don't worry too much about this last bit here. We'll cover that a bit later during one of the other episodes when we work more with the where clause. But for now, key thing to focus on is of course the inner joins and doing that multiple times to get your results. So hopefully that's starting to sink in there, and you can see the complexity that starts creeping in when you put in a few more joins. Next bit I'd like to cover is the ability that you can rename the columns in your results set. So if we have a whole lot of columns that we're pulling for people to review, sometimes they are in some weird languages, some weird letters, a numbering system, etc. And we actually need to convert those into something a bit more readable. Now, with our result set, we can do just that. And remember, when you are renaming a column within your select query, it doesn't rename it in the actual database itself. It will only rename it in your result set when you execute your query. So, first of all you need to do is type in as, and then you can put inverted commas, a single inverted comma, like I've put, with your new column name in there. Now this is quite an old method, and it's not usually done these days. It's more of a old deprecated procedure that's still in SQL Server, but we don't tend to rename columns using these single inverted commas there. So if we just wanted to rename customer name as customer, that's fine. And you can also simply just leave off the inverted commas at the beginning and the end. You can even not even put in the word as. Sometimes you don't even need a space if, of course, you've put in your square brackets to designate your column name, and then you put in what you want to rename it to. So in effect, it's exactly like pseudonyms, where you're given this specific column a nickname. I'm just calling it customer, and this one category. Now, what you need to bear in mind is that as soon as you have a space in between what you want to name your column to, you do need to put square brackets around it, like I've shown you here. Otherwise, SQL Server thinks that there's some sort of function going on, so it gets a bit confused, as you can see with the red squiggles. So if you really wanted to rename your order ID column as order space number, then simply put that in square brackets like that. Product name, we've already renamed it as such, so we're happy with that. As you can see, the red squiggle has gone away, so we know that it's good to go. So let's run that off and see what happens. As you can see, customer is just customer, category, order number and product name. So you can then copy this data to Excel and send it on to whoever asks for it, and they'll understand straight away what those column names mean. And that's simply it for renaming the columns. You're pretty much just giving the column a pseudonym in your result set, and that's all there is to it. Pretty straightforward and simple. So why don't we take the example from above, we'll highlight that, Control C to copy, and we'll give a go at renaming all the columns. So if you want to pause the video, give that a go, rename them to anything that you want, and we'll have a look at your example versus what I've got. Now there's no right or wrong way of doing this. Your query will execute exactly the same manner, return the same amount of rows, but it's just more of a practice to show you how easy it is to rename your columns. So let's paste that, what I've copied, Control V, and we just say, purely and simply, rename that as supplier, as category. Now, common convention is to not have spaces at all between your naming. However, when you are sending columns across to customers, they might actually prefer spaces between the two words. Makes it easier to read, especially if you're exporting to Excel. This is more technical sort of database convention to not have spaces in any of your names, any of your column names, and any of your objects. I like to put in as. Again, it just clearly designates that as the new column name. We're just going to call it item. And you can just simply copy and paste what you want as well. In stock, there we go. And that's all there is to it. Let's run that off, and you can see your columns renamed into something a bit easier, a bit more understandable. and more understandable. So, purely and simply, we've covered multiple joins, multiple inner joins within the same query, showing you all the fun and games that we have with that. A few things to watch out for, and remember, most importantly, is the order that you place things in. You see it's got a red squiggle because it's looking for C in the two tables above and it's not finding it, so it's saying where is it. Order is important. We've given it a try here to show you that while you can build up your query and bring in columns from multiple tables, it can get a little bit tricky, and you just have to follow the process of finding those linking columns between the two tables, and if it doesn't exist on one of the tables above, look at the next table and see if your ID column exists in that. We've also looked at renaming, which is pretty common, pretty straightforward. A few things to watch out for, especially if you're putting a space in there. You need to put your square brackets. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this quick lesson. I think we've covered the inner join in enough detail for you to have a crack at another example. So, what's happened is the customer service team are doing a tidy up of all the customers on our system. A recent hacking attempt has got local officials wanting to review our processes of handling sensitive data. So, you need to provide the customer service manager with the following information so they can ensure that everything is above board and we're not holding customer details that we should not be. So, these are the 5 columns there. It's all customer related, so thankfully a lot of the customer information is put in a variety of different schemas. So you've got customers in there, probably a good starting point, and then you've got all sorts of other bits and pieces that you need to pull in to the query itself. A lot of columns to look at, and let's see how you go on that one, and we will cover it in the next video. Now, rename columns if you want to. It's not necessary at this stage, but you can give it a go just to practice and get used to it. And that's it, everyone, for part 4, the 4th video so far, and the 3rd one to cover the inner join. So we've looked at this join in quite a lot of detail. It's very commonly used, and hopefully you've all got your head around that. So join me for the next video, as in part 5 we'll be looking at other join types with a more of a focus on the left join. Until then, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful day.